Michael Maslansky is partners and author of The Language of Trust. And he's the guy that we brought in last week that looks at the language in ads, and then they have that like ticker system where people can tell you how they think about the ad or what they think about the ad as it's happening. And you took a look at how people responded to an endorsement by our current president, Barack Obama. And here's the name again, guys. And then somebody who was endorsed by former President Bill Clinton. How did they stack up?
That's right. Well, we've been looking at ads for the last couple of weeks. We've had people respond emotionally using something called the reactor, where they get to use their mouse and go to the right if they really like the ad and go to the left if they don't like the ad. And so we put the two together, and I think if you had to call it, you'd say that Clinton does well in terms of endorsing people, but not as well as Obama actually does in getting his base out and riling them up in terms of enthusiasm for this campaign.
I'm not really sure what to think about that, because outside of this ad, I haven't read that at all.
Well, you know, I think what you see is people are responding emotionally to this ad. And while Bill Clinton doesn't really hurt anybody out there, I don't think that he's generating the kind of enthusiasm that's necessary to get more people to the polls. And while Obama actually has a much more polarizing impact on both sides, if you're trying to increase enthusiasm for your base, Obama's going to be more effective in that regard than Bill Clinton is.
All righty, so we have our first one, the endorsement. Hey, let's run the endorsement by former President Bill Clinton. He's endorsing Blanche Lincoln. Let's take a peek at this one.
Now, Blanche's opponent is not saying much now. Have you noticed that? That's because he's depending on you to be mad. So he hopes that you will forget that he voted for a Republican budget to privatize Medicare. That since he first ran for Congress, he said we should privatize Social Security. You got a woman here who's produced for you over and over and over again, and who never shuts the door, always thinks we can do better.
I'm Blanche Lincoln, and I approve this message.
You know, I don't know if it's the Southern girl in me, but he's a good politician. I mean, just in the sense of how he speaks, reaches through that ad. Didn't work, though.
Well, you know, I think people listen to it, and first he starts bashing the other guy. And I think if you're going to come in and be a surrogate and try and provide an endorsement...
No, maybe you don't go negative?
Yeah, you know, I don't think you go negative in that context. I think you have other people who can go negative and really hit a hard negative message. He should be out there to generate enthusiasm, generate a positive reaction, and it doesn't really do that in this ad.
Well, and we saw this when he was on the campaign trail for his wife, too, Hillary Clinton, when she was going up against Barack Obama in the primaries for the Democrats 2 years ago, that the more negative he went, the more it seemed to hurt her. Yeah.
Absolutely. He did a lot of damage to her campaign by going negative. I mean, there should have been other surrogates in that campaign who were going to go negative.
And a former president needs to rise above, and he didn't.
Absolutely.
Let's take a look now at Cedric Richmond. President Obama endorsed him in this ad. Roll it.
The city of New Orleans has had its trials, but you've also had great champions fighting to see you through the tough times. Cedric Richmond is one of those champions. From coaching and mentoring kids who grew up like he did, to passing tax credits to help New Orleans businesses get back on their feet after Katrina, Cedric's always been there, making a difference for the community. New Orleans needs Cedric Richmond in Congress, and so do I. I hope you'll give Cedric your vote.
I'm Cedric Richmond, and I approve this message.
If you look at the lines, if you compare them, on the Obama ad, the blue line, which is Democrats, goes much higher than it does with the Clinton ad. The red line, which is a negative reaction from Republicans, also goes much lower. So it's a much more polarizing ad, just seeing him up on screen. Much more polarizing. But again, if you're targeting an ad towards your base, if you're trying to close the enthusiasm gap, that works.
Yeah, you know what's interesting about that? Michael, speak to this if you will. Michael, by the way, I don't know if you know him. He's known, at least in my notes, as the message dude. Like if you're running and you need to get your message out, you might want to call him. How likely are you to vote for a candidate who uses negative campaign ads? 1, more likely, negative ads highlight faults in a candidate. 2, less likely, these ads don't benefit an election campaign, or not sure. What would you say? Just based on your knowledge.
Am I personally?
Not
or
personally,
in general?
but just based
People
on...
are much more likely. Unequivocally much more likely.
And they're unequivocally going to tell you that they're less likely.
Exactly.
Okay, so more likely to vote when there's a negative ad campaign going on, but they're going to lie about it.
Yes, well, there are no campaigns that aren't negative campaigns, and it's not that they're going to lie.
Wait a minute. There are no campaigns that are not
There's not a single
negative?
campaign that you can find out there that doesn't have contrast ads, negative ads out there, and it's not unique to this cycle. It may be a little bit harsher this cycle.
Not always from the candidate, though, because we've seen a lot of these groups pop up So, I mean, do we
Even
count that
from the
against the
candidate.
candidate? Oh.
And that's also a
Am I a
that's
little
just a
Pollyanna
funding
to think
issue.
that,
Yes.
that there's some people out there who are just running nice ads?
I will say, if I can, that there's a difference between a good negative ad and a bad negative ad. There are potshot negative ads that try and empty the kitchen sink, and in terms of attacks and personal attacks, that don't contribute to a narrative about the candidate, that don't work, and they actually will turn people against the attacker. But if you pick a good area of focus for a negative ad, and you go in and you tap into that negative narrative and you execute, it will absolutely damage the person.
And I think you would say on that, timing is critical when you come out with a negative ad. Let's take this latest ad, Sharon Angle against Reid. An earlier point in the campaign, that would not have worked well. Right here at the end of the campaign, that negative ad has great impact.
Negative ads light up the election. King of Politics is his name. I asked King of Politics if he's actually going to run on Tuesday with that name. Reese C. Cup writes, well, it depends on what your definition of a negative ad is.
I think that's a fair point.
I think that's a slam at President Clinton.
But it's actually true. I mean, there are all kinds of different types of negative ads.
Can you give us a couple of your favorite ads, just things that pop out in your mind that worked, not personally, but just professionally, that worked across the country this election season?
Let's see. I think that if I look at some of the ads that have worked the best, the attacks on Republicans for outsourcing have been a real surprise to me, because they've been very effective at presenting a democratic economic argument. It's kind of the only economic argument from Democrats in terms of accusing Republicans of outsourcing jobs. They've been negative ads, but they've worked. Marco Rubio's done a great job with some of his positive ads, some of his ads when he holds up the stimulus plan and talks about how big it is, and how he just kind of calmly talks to the camera and says that things have to change. Sharon Angle has had a couple of good positive ads where she talks about government being broken. So there are a couple of phrases in there that I think have really worked well in terms of tapping into what people are thinking and feeling this election campaign.
What are a couple that you just think, boy, that shouldn't have hit the air? I think I know one, but go ahead.
Let's see, which shouldn't have hit the air.
Because they're not free.
Yeah, I mean, there's this Aqua Buddha ad, the attack. Have you heard the Rand Paul Aqua Buddha ad?
Yeah.
I mean, there are some points where they seem so personal and intentionally malicious that they really shouldn't be on air. They don't contribute to our politics. They shouldn't contribute to the way people make decisions about how to vote. And those are the ads that I wish we didn't see on air. But then there are a lot that are going to be memorable ads. I mean, I think the Christine O'Donnell ads, just in terms of talking about, again, ads that we'll remember, those are going to be the I'm Not a Witch ad will be the defining ad of this election cycle.
Why didn't the Republican Party help her out more?
Well, they were foolish in not supporting her. If they'd gotten in from the outset, she won the primary, and it's historic in America. A candidate wins the primary.
And she had momentum behind her.
She had momentum.
She raised money on her own.
Yes. She's a bright person. She presents herself well on television.
Was this instead, Christine O'Donnell?
Pardon?
Uh-oh.
Hey, she has one of the best smiles going.
No, she definitely presents herself well on television.
Yeah. She had to campaign against both the Democrats and establishment Republicans.
And we've heard her actually say that she had to campaign against the people in her own party. I still, go ahead.
Well, I think that there's some larger issues as well. I mean, if you compare her to Sharon Angle, who are similar candidates in a lot of ways, and you say, all right, well, we've got two fairly, certainly anti-establishment candidates, whether you say extreme or just kind of out of the mainstream candidates. They've got a chance to knock down Harry Reid. You're gonna go after that with everything that you've got. In Delaware, that Senate seat, aside from it being a seat that you may have a chance of picking up, and frankly, probably, once she was in, not a great chance, it probably just wasn't worth the resources.
Michael Maslansky, so good to have all of you here. You guys are a lot of fun.